Tommy, are we to assume that this large number of child soldiers was recruited for the battle which the South Africans took part in?
Well, certainly. You have to understand that the issue of child soldiers is such a big, complicated issue right across, especially the central to northern part of Africa. So many children there are recruited, brought into the armed forces, and many of them die out in the front line for various reasons. And the numbers vary. According to UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund, anywhere between 300 and 500,000 child soldiers have been recruited into active battles right across the African continent.
Just how old on average are these children?
Well, on average, these children vary from age, basically from about between 7 and 8 years old, 8 years young, let me say that rather, and up to about 18 or so. The reason they take the youngsters as well, from what I've learned out in the Eastern DRC, is because they act as sort of the carry boys and the carry girls. The girls, unfortunately, are taken as sex slaves, and that is a very, very problematic and very tragic thing that happens to them. They are forced to cook, clean, and basically do sexual favors under duress for these soldiers.
Is there a high rate of drug addiction among them?
Absolutely. That is one of the ways that they prep these children. Now, you must understand that some of these children, many of the children, don't have a sense of what mortality is, and because of their innocence, they have to be revved up in some way to prepare them for battle and to make them as aggressive as possible. So often they are drugged, given alcohol, and fed with propaganda, and given these ideals that they're fighting for some mission, which will then ensure hero status to them and bring wealth and fortune and fame to their families.
Tommy, you've watched this process of demobilization, of rehabilitation in the DRC. How does it actually work?
Well, usually what happens is that the children go out to the front lines and they are exposed to live battle for the first time. Many of them are often traumatized after seeing their colleagues die. They're introduced to the concept of death in a very violent, very sudden, very brutal manner, and they can't fight anymore. They're useless then to these armed forces. They're either dumped. Another way they're introduced to sort of rehabilitation is if they are injured in the front line, they're useless again to the armed forces, and they are dumped at the nearest clinic or so forth. Then they are taken on by these aid organizations who then have to nurture them, heal them both psychologically and physically, and then try to track down their families through radio broadcasts, through local non-government organizations and other channels, and then try to reintroduce them back into society, which can be a challenge.
Well, that's my next question to me. I mean, how do families welcome this child back in knowing what they've been through?
This is the biggest challenge with the reintegration of child soldiers, according to these aid organizations, because in some cases, many of these children have committed atrocities in their own communities. So they go back after committing rapes or after being involved in fighting where neighbors have been killed, and in often cases, the neighbors want some form of compensation from their families. So in some cases, children are shunned or turned away, and in others, they are not welcome, because then they have to come back to a situation where this child who's been traumatized and who's been indoctrinated comes back home thinking he's a general or some high-ranking military official, and then has to take orders from mommy and daddy, and that just doesn't work out. And often not, they are lured back by the promise of wealth and easy living out with the armed groups.
So they return to
many
life.
cases they return to life in the armed groups, because in these regions many of the people survive by subsistence. It's hard, laborious work. They have to work the fields, tend the fields, and often not. With the armed forces, these children learn to find that the power of the gun equals easy riches. They can hold people up, and they get liquor, they get drugs. Many of them are often addicted by the time they go back home. And then the life of a farmer, peasant farmer, is not as appealing and not as easy to them. And of course, they have to answer to somebody, and they believe in their minds that they are generals, that they are military officials who don't take command from anyone who's not a military officer. So it's very complicated, and socially, it does a lot of damage to the fabric of whatever country is affected by this scourge.
News that moves. eNCA.com.